Joining us is Ihor Romanenko, founder of the charitable foundation Let's Close the Sky of Ukraine and Lieutenant General. Ihor Alexandrovich, welcome to our broadcast.
Thank you, and greetings to you and our viewers.
Ihor Alexandrovich, there is a lot to discuss, yes, and many events are happening, but let's talk about what is going on. I won't get ahead of myself right now because yesterday there were a lot of remarks about where, let's say, serious active combat operations might begin. We will also talk about that as well. But speaking not about the future, but about what is happening right now at the front, Ihor Alexandrovich, what can we state today in April 2026? What is the main goal of the Russian occupier at this moment? Donetsk, Luhansk regions? Or do we still see that there are options for other regions as well? The floor is yours.
Well, the Russians are implementing two concepts for seizing our territories. The first is the four regions, according to their illegally amended constitution, which contradicts international law. And here, the fighting continues, especially intense, particularly in, let's say, the Donetsk region, and also in the Zaporizhzhia region around Huliaipol. And the second is the creation of so-called sanitary buffer zones. That is, they've been working on this for over a year now, probably about a year and a half, the Kharkiv and Sumy regions. They also included the Chernihiv region, but didn't have enough forces. But even that turned out to be insufficient. Therefore, it was decided that they might expand further into the Vinnytsia region. Well, as they say, appetite comes with eating, but such Napoleonic plans, if you can call them that, it's a play on words, since the number of regions being listed keeps increasing. But in reality, we can see what's actually happening on the front lines. On the front lines, starting from the end of last year, Russian losses have increased significantly. Furthermore, beginning in the early days of December, the total monthly casualties sustained on the battlefield, which had reached approximately 30,000 personnel every single month, actually began to exceed the total number of new soldiers that the Russian military is currently capable of mobilizing and sending to the front lines. And because of this, the situation forced Putin to move to covert mobilization. Well, that's the short version.
Let's continue. Igor Stanislavovich, more than a dozen explosions occurred last night in several regions of Russia. It was loud in Krasnodar Krai and Tver. According to monitoring channels, the main strike hit the Krimskaya linear production dispatching station. It supplies Transneft and is part of its structure. A fire broke out in Tver. Targets in Gelendzhik were also hit. According to eyewitnesses, air defense was firing at drones, but judging by the explosions, they failed to shoot them down. Well, obviously loud is a euphemism. Clearly, these are Ukrainian drones, and we are seeing attacks by Ukraine on the Russian Federation. In this regard, Igor Alexandrovich, this ceasefire proposed by Volodymyr Zelensky, to which Putin responded until the end of tomorrow, as I understand it, the airspace and everything flying through it are not included in this ceasefire.
Well, for now, the current situation is that each individual country has already made its own specific proposal. Here I agree with you. We need to pay attention to what Ukraine did first. Moreover, our president actually escalated the conditions after Putin responded, claiming that this was their initiative, that they had already given the order and everything else was just propaganda. That is, our president said, and this also became widely known, that not only are we agreeing to this ceasefire, which we were the first to propose, but we are also suggesting, looking ahead, to move towards a suspension of hostilities. Well, if not in all areas, again, going back to history, when negotiations on the peace plan began, it was Ukraine that immediately proposed, let's stop hostilities in the airspace and at sea. That's it. Well, the Americans advocated for stopping everything at once. And that's why, unfortunately, we still haven't achieved anything in this regard. So around these events, what is unfolding is mostly an information war. And here, once again, we need to return to history. A ceasefire from the Russian side is usually declared for propaganda purposes. And then, well, it's clear how they use it. They are already preparing to redeploy to the necessary directions during this time. And here it is very important to keep in mind where they are planning to advance next, that is, to carry out the spring-summer campaign they announced starting from the third decade of March, as if they had begun, and those offensive actions, the implementation of their offensive plans, were actually significantly undermined by the actions of the defense forces, meaning up until March 17th, when they, so to speak, began such active defense measures, which were carried out by the Ukrainian defense forces, including counterattacks in Zaporizhzhia, Dnipropetrovsk, Lyman, and so on. Therefore, at the moment, there is serious work being done around this event.
Igor Alexandrovich, with your permission, I want to add, yes, it will be very difficult until September. I think that many people have already discussed this quote from the president. This was said by the president of Ukraine, yes, speaking about negotiations and the situation at the front. Spring and summer will be crucial for Ukraine, and Russia may increase the pressure. Again, I am adding this to what was said by the president of Ukraine. I mean, in the context, yes, of course, the president was talking about diplomacy, but he also meant that the coming months could be difficult for the country, including at the front. But even now, the situation is quite difficult. I don't, Igor Alexandrovich, I don't want to discuss this in order to, yes, somehow interpret the president's words. No, I'm talking about the actual situation at the front. Right now, it's spring, summer. Yes, in your opinion, based on what we're seeing now, is the prospect, let's say, the maximum escalation of the situation at the front primarily connected to the diplomatic context? Or will Russia, in terms of military action, really exert maximum pressure in all directions?
The Russians will continue to use the military factor first and foremost, while presenting activities, let's say, in the humanitarian sphere as a kind of struggle for peace. Well, first of all, we should recall that Ukrainian and allied intelligence have obtained the plans of the Russian armed forces, which indicate that these are already plans. That is, they have been planned and are being carried out. Ready or not, or rather, they are carrying out all the necessary support and logistics in order to conduct combat operations this year and next year. That's in their plans. So there shouldn't really be any illusions about this. Of course, the only thing that can truly stop them are the appropriate and decisive actions of Ukraine's defense forces. These brave units will be assisted by their real and committed allies in terms of significant changes and the steady growth of the defense forces' overall capabilities directly on the front lines, which will ultimately make it possible to halt the ongoing advance of the Russian troops. From what we have observed quite recently, the military actions and the overall situation on the ground have significantly intensified. This is still occurring around the area of Pokrovsk. This is happening near Kostiantynivka, and this is also taking place to the far west of Huliepol, although the heavy fighting continues unabated. Well, we clearly see this unfolding across both the Donetsk and Zaporizhzhia regions as the conflict evolves. Although, on the other hand, there are offensive actions by Ukraine's defense forces, for example, in Dnipropetrovsk, but the Russian offensive campaign has begun. Naturally, it poses its own threats, and the question comes down to how effectively our Ukrainian defense forces will be able to disrupt these enemy offensive plans.
Thank you, Igor Alexandrovich. We thank you and always look forward to having you on our broadcasts. Igor Romanenko, founder of the charitable foundation We Will Close the Skies of Ukraine, Lieutenant General, was with us on the air.